It was supposed to be just another quiet evening. The kind of night I'd been looking forward to all week, just me, a glass of wine, and a long chat with my best friend Olivia. We had done this countless times, sitting together on my couch, gossiping, laughing, venting about our lives. It was a tradition. But as I opened the door to greet her, there was something different about tonight. Maybe it was the way she stood there, hesitating just a little too long before stepping inside, or the slight strain in her voice when she asked if I was doing okay. I shook it off at first, blaming it on the stress of the week, but as the evening progressed, I couldn't help but feel like there was something in the air. A tension I couldn't pinpoint. "Are you sure everything's okay?" she asked for the third time, her eyes locking onto mine, searching for something. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired, I guess." But I wasn't fine. Something was gnawing at me, and it wasn't just the wine or the exhaustion. There was a weird feeling that something was off. It was as if the universe was about to hand me a truth I wasn't ready to hear. I just didn't know it yet. We sat down, flicked through the TV channels aimlessly, and pretended everything was normal. We laughed, we ate, we talked about work, about boys, about everything and nothing. But all the while, that nagging feeling continued to hover in the background, an invisible weight I couldn't shake off. Then, my phone buzzed. I didn't think much of it at first, just the usual notifications, messages, and emails that flooded in by the minute. But as I glanced down at my screen, something caught my attention. A message from a mutual friend, Natalie. It was a simple text, but my stomach dropped when I saw the attached photo. It was a picture of Olivia. And my ex. The one I had spent so many months getting over. The one who had broken my heart. They were standing close to each other, their bodies almost touching, laughing as if they were the best of friends. I stared at the photo, my mind racing. My heart started to pound in my chest. I knew this wasn't right. I had to be seeing things. This couldn't be happening. But it was. Before I could even think of what to do next, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Natalie. This time a simple caption. "Guess what? Looks like Olivia's got herself a new man. And it's your ex." I felt my entire world tilt. It was like the ground beneath me had been pulled out, and I was falling into an abyss I couldn't escape. I turned to Olivia, who was sitting next to me on the couch, oblivious to what had just rocked my world. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight. I didn't know what to say, what to do. The pain surged through me like an electric shock, making my whole body tense up. I held my phone up in front of her, my fingers trembling. "What's this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Olivia looked at the screen, her eyes widening as her expression shifted from confusion to something else, something I couldn't quite place. Guilt? Fear? It didn't matter. The damage was already done. "Olivia," I whispered again, my voice breaking. "How long?" She opened her mouth to say something, but then paused. It was as though she didn't have an answer ready, or maybe she didn't know where to start. I didn't care. I didn't care about explanations. I didn't care about excuses. All I wanted to know was how long this betrayal had been going on, how long she had been seeing him behind my back. Her eyes flickered away, and I saw the guilt flash in them, sharp and undeniable. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I wanted to scream, to shout, to throw the phone at her, but instead I felt numb. It was as if the floor had fallen out from beneath me, and I couldn't even find the strength to stand. She took a deep breath, clearly struggling to find the words. "I didn't want to hurt you," she finally said, her voice shaking. But it just happened. I didn't plan for it. I could feel the hot rush of anger bubbling inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had to. I couldn't lose control. Not yet. Not until I had all the answers. "How long?" I asked again, my voice firm this time, though the tremor in it was unmistakable. A few weeks, she admitted, looking down at her hands, as if they were suddenly the most interesting thing in the room. But it wasn't like that at first. We were just talking, catching up, and then it turned into something more. Something more? Something more than what? A betrayal? A lie? Was that what she was calling it now? My mind was spinning, each word making it harder to breathe, harder to think straight. How could she have done this? How could she betray me like this? I stood up suddenly, the room feeling too small, too suffocating. You knew how much he hurt me. You knew everything. And still, you did this. She stood too, but instead of coming closer, she stepped back, as though afraid I might lash out. She didn't know what I was capable of, and in that moment, neither did I. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for it to hurt you this much. It just happened." I let out a bitter laugh, the sound hollow in the otherwise silent room. "You're sorry? You're sorry?" My voice grew louder, but I didn't care. I was past caring. "You think that's going to fix this? Fix us? You were my best friend, Olivia, my best friend. And you stabbed me in the back. But it wasn't just that, was it? It wasn't just about her dating my ex. It was the trust, the friendship, the years of shared memories, all of it shattered in an instant. She didn't just cross a line, she demolished it. The pain I felt wasn't just the heartbreak of betrayal, it was the loss of someone I had loved, someone I thought I could rely on. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, deeper than anything I had ever experienced before. "I don't know what to say," Olivia whispered, her voice cracking as tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you. Please believe me." But her words fell on deaf ears. Nothing she said could undo what had been done. And as much as I wanted to believe she was sorry, I couldn't. Not after everything. Just then, her phone buzzed, and she hesitated before reaching for it. I need to show you something," she said, her voice small. "You have to see this." Confused and angry, I snatched the phone from her hand, demanding to know what she was talking about. What else could she possibly have to say that would make this any worse? When I saw the video, everything inside me broke all over again. I didn't want to see it. I had already seen enough, felt enough, to last me a lifetime. The sting of betrayal, the dull ache in my chest, the way everything I thought was real had crumbled in the span of minutes. It was all too much. But as Olivia's trembling hands pushed the phone toward me, I couldn't avoid it. The words "you have to see this" echoed in my mind, and despite every instinct telling me to walk away, I found myself staring at the screen, pressing play. The first thing I saw was the familiar face. Him. My ex. The man who had once held my heart in his hands and then destroyed it without a second thought. His face was the same, handsome, charismatic, effortlessly charming, but there was something different about him now. He was no longer mine, and that was a truth I couldn't avoid anymore. But what caught me off guard wasn't him. It was her. There she was, Olivia, sitting next to him, her laughter echoing through the phone speakers. The way they were sitting close to one another, their bodies angled in a way that seemed too intimate for comfort. My stomach churned as I watched them, feeling like I was intruding on something that was never meant for my eyes. "Why are you showing me this?" I finally managed to ask, my voice breaking, barely able to make sense of the situation. "What is this? Why?" Olivia didn't answer at first. Her face was unreadable, like she was trying to figure out whether or not I was ready for the next part. But then her lips parted, and she whispered, "You need to know the truth." The video continued, and the next few seconds felt like a slow-motion car crash. There they were, laughing, their hands brushing against each other in the most casual way, but to me, it was anything but casual. It was like a punch to the gut, one I didn't see coming, but one that I knew would hurt for a long time. And then, the moment that shattered everything. In the middle of their laughter, I saw him lean in, his face inches from hers. His lips parted, and I could clearly see him whisper something into her ear. My breath caught in my throat as I tried to read his lips. "I've missed you." The words hit me like a tidal wave. I could feel my heart break all over again. This wasn't just some casual fling. This wasn't some harmless mistake. No, this was real. He had moved on. He had moved on with her. The world seemed to close in on me as I watched them exchange a look that felt so familiar. The way she smiled, the way he grinned back, it was everything I had once felt. Everything I thought I had with him, and yet now it was so painfully out of reach. The video ended abruptly, leaving me in silence. My eyes were glued to the screen, but the image was burned into my mind. I could barely breathe, my chest tight with a mixture of anger, hurt, and confusion. The screen faded to black, and the room around me seemed to close in. I didn't even notice Olivia had left the couch until I heard the faint sound of her footsteps behind me. I couldn't turn around. I couldn't face her. I didn't know how to look at her anymore, let alone speak to her. I looked down at the phone in my hand, my fingers clutching it so tightly that it felt like it might snap. My mind was racing. How long had this been going on? What was their real relationship? Was this something she had planned from the start, or had it just happened? I didn't know what was worse, the fact that she had crossed the line, or the fact that it seemed so effortless for her. For a moment, I felt like I was drowning. The world was spinning, and I couldn't hold on to anything. The pain, the confusion, the sense of betrayal, it was too much. My body started to tremble as I felt my grip on the phone slip, but I held on to it just long enough to throw it across the room. It hit the wall with a sharp thud, the noise echoing in the silence that followed. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. I didn't care if she could hear the tears in my voice. "Why him? Why my ex? Why didn't you tell me? Why now?" Olivia didn't answer right away. She was still behind me, standing there, but I couldn't look at her. I didn't want to see her face. The guilt in her eyes wouldn't change the fact that she had betrayed me. I could feel the tears welling up, threatening to spill over. But I fought them. I had fought so hard to move on, and now it felt like I had been dragged back into a nightmare I couldn't escape. "I didn't want to hurt you," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "I swear I didn't. But things just got complicated. It wasn't supposed to be like this." Complicated? No, this wasn't complicated. This was a simple choice. She had chosen him over me. She had chosen betrayal over friendship. "How long?" I asked again, my voice a low growl. I needed to know. I needed to understand how long she had been keeping this secret, how long I had been in the dark while she and he played their game behind my back. "A few weeks," she replied softly, almost too softly. "But I never meant for it to go this far. I swear I never wanted to hurt you. It didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. The words were out in the open, and no amount of apology would fix it. The trust we had built for years was shattered beyond repair, and it wasn't just the trust between me and her. It was the trust between me and the world, between me and myself." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I can't do this," I said, my voice steady but breaking. I couldn't look at her anymore. I didn't want to hear any more excuses. "I can't look at you the same way anymore." Her voice wavered as she tried to explain, but I didn't care. There was nothing she could say that would make this better. Nothing that would undo the sting of what she had done. "Please," she begged, her voice raw with emotion. "Please don't walk away from me. We're friends. We've been through everything together." I shook my head, the words slipping from my lips before I could stop them. "You don't get it, do you? You betrayed me. And now you expect me to just forgive you?" I stood up, taking a few steps toward the door. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I needed to leave. I needed to get away from her, from him, from everything that had just fallen apart in my life. Before I opened the door, I turned to her one last time. "I don't know who you are anymore, Olivia. I don't know what to believe." And with that, I stepped out into the night, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me like I couldn't escape it. The world outside was cold. My feet felt heavy as I walked aimlessly down the street, the chill of the night air biting at my skin, but I barely noticed it. The adrenaline from the confrontation was starting to wear off, replaced by the overwhelming numbness that crept in. I felt like a walking ghost, disconnected from reality, my mind replaying the events over and over again. Olivia's face. His face. The look in their eyes when they saw the betrayal they had so easily handed me. I couldn't shake the image of them together. Of him whispering those words to her, those damn words, "I've missed you." I had spent months convincing myself that I was over him, that I had moved on from the heartbreak, from the toxic relationship that had left me broken. I had spent so long telling myself that I didn't need him anymore, that I was strong enough to stand on my own. But now, everything felt like a lie. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I jumped. I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone. I was so tired of hearing people's voices, of hearing their concerns. I didn't want their sympathy. I didn't want their pity. I just wanted to feel something that wasn't this searing pain in my chest. I pulled the phone out anyway. A text from Natalie. My heart sank as I read it. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea this would happen." "Are you okay?" I stared at the message for a long time, the words spinning around in my head. She had no idea? Of course, she didn't. How could anyone? No one knew the way I had felt about him, the way I had trusted her with everything. It felt like the entire foundation of my life had been ripped out from underneath me, and I was just left standing there, lost and alone. I wanted to respond, to tell her how much it hurt, to let her know that the world as I knew it had just shattered. But I couldn't. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face anyone, let alone explain the depths of the pain I was feeling. I tossed the phone back into my bag and kept walking, letting my feet guide me wherever they wanted to go. I ended up at a small park, a place I used to go to think when I was younger. The swings creaked in the wind, their slow rhythmic movement almost mocking me. Everything felt like a distant memory, like a dream I couldn't wake up from. I sat on one of the benches and stared up at the stars, wishing I could escape into them. Everything felt impossible. The betrayal, the lies, the way my life had been turned upside down in a matter of hours, it was too much to bear. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to pick up the pieces. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was from Olivia. "I'm sorry. I never meant for it to hurt you like this. Please talk to me when you're ready." I stared at the message, my chest tightening. I wanted to throw my phone across the park, to scream at her, to let her know just how much she had destroyed me. But I didn't. Instead, I stared at her words, feeling nothing but anger and sadness. Why couldn't she just get it? Why couldn't she understand that what she had done wasn't just a mistake? It wasn't something that could be easily fixed with an apology. I clicked the phone off and shoved it back into my bag. I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I was done. As I sat there, the weight of everything finally caught up with me. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The tears started to fall, one by one, until they became an uncontrollable flood. I didn't care if anyone saw me. I didn't care if the world was watching. The pain was too much. It had been building up for so long, and now it was all spilling out. I cried for the relationship I had lost. I cried for the friendship I had thought would never break. I cried for the pieces of myself that had been torn apart by their betrayal. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself feel the full weight of it all. I don't know how long I sat there, letting the tears fall, letting the world keep spinning around me while I stayed frozen in place. Eventually, the cold started to seep into my bones, and I realized that I couldn't stay out here forever. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my jacket, taking a deep breath as I stood up. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface was starting to build again, this time in a way I couldn't ignore. I wasn't just angry at Olivia anymore. I wasn't just angry at him. I was angry at myself. How could I have let this happen? How could I have been so blind? I pulled my phone out again, my hands shaking as I scrolled through my contacts. I couldn't keep avoiding this. I had to face it. But the moment I saw Olivia's name on the screen, my stomach twisted. I couldn't bring myself to call her. I couldn't do it. I tapped out a quick text instead, my fingers moving on autopilot. "We're done. I need space. Please don't contact me again." I hit send before I could change my mind. The message felt cold, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I couldn't keep pretending like nothing had happened. I couldn't keep pretending that we could go back to the way things were. I was done being a victim of their lies. I was done being the person who let people walk all over me. I deserved better than this. The phone buzzed again, and I hesitated before checking the message. It was from him this time. "I'm sorry. I never meant for it to end like this. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, my heart aching once again. I had loved him, I had trusted him, but now he was just a ghost. A reminder of everything I had given up to be with him, only for him to turn around and hurt me in the worst possible way. "No," I thought to myself. "I'm done." I didn't respond. I stood up from the bench, taking a deep breath as I walked away from the park. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this define me. I was going to rebuild. I was going to find my strength again. The next few days felt like an endless blur. I hardly recognized myself. Every time I looked in the mirror, it felt like I was staring at a stranger, someone who had been worn down by betrayal, by heartache. My face seemed to sag with the weight of it all, my eyes were hollow, and my mind was filled with a constant buzzing, a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. But I couldn't stay in that place forever. I couldn't let this consume me. I refused to. It was hard to focus on anything other than the wreckage in my life. I tried to go to work, to distract myself with my daily routine, but every moment felt like I was walking through quicksand, each step dragging me further into despair. Olivia's text messages kept flooding my phone, her apologies ringing in my ears, but I didn't respond. What was there to say? The trust was gone. The friendship was gone. And him? He was nothing more than a painful memory that I couldn't escape. The hardest part wasn't just the betrayal, though. It was the way I felt like I had been left out in the cold, with no one to turn to. The people I thought I could trust had turned against me, and now I was completely alone. For the first time in years, I felt like I was walking through life without a safety net. I knew I needed to make a decision. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, constantly replaying the past, wondering where I went wrong, asking myself if I was somehow to blame for their actions. I wasn't. I knew that. But in those dark moments, the doubt crept in, and it felt easier to blame myself than face the reality of their choices. I found myself sitting at a coffee shop one morning, nursing a half-empty cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The hum of conversations around me was muted, the world moving on as if nothing had happened, as if my entire life hadn't just exploded into chaos. I felt disconnected from everything, from everyone, even from myself. My phone buzzed again, and I couldn't help but glance at it. Another message from Olivia. I sighed, setting the phone down on the table, staring at the screen. "Please, let's talk. I miss you." Her words stung, but they didn't have the power to break me anymore. It had taken a few days, but I realized something. I wasn't the one who needed fixing. She was. She had broken something that couldn't be repaired with words, with apologies, or with time. And as much as I had loved her, I wasn't going to waste another minute of my life trying to fix a relationship that had already been shattered beyond repair. I picked up my phone, typing out a response, my fingers moving quickly as if the words were finally ready to escape. I need space. I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. I hope you understand. I hesitated before hitting send, but then I realized I wasn't doing this for her. I was doing it for me. I needed to reclaim my life, my peace. I pressed send, and the finality of it hit me like a wave. There was no turning back now. The next few days were quieter. I didn't hear from Olivia again. And that, in some strange way, felt like relief. I hadn't realized how much her presence had been weighing me down until she was gone. The space I had created for myself felt like a breath of fresh air after drowning in a sea of lies. But even with the silence, the emotional bruises were still there. I wasn't sure how to heal from this, how to pick up the pieces of my heart and trust again. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to. The thought of opening myself up to anyone else after what had happened felt like an impossibility. How could I ever let someone in again when they could so easily betray me? I started spending more time doing things that made me feel good, that helped me reclaim my identity. I took long walks through the park, letting the sunshine warm my face. I started journaling again, pouring my feelings out onto the pages, giving myself the space to grieve, to process, and to let go. I made an effort to reconnect with other friends, people who had never been part of my past with Olivia and him, people who hadn't been affected by the betrayal. Slowly but surely, I began to rebuild the parts of myself that had been lost. I also started focusing on myself, on what made me happy. I enrolled in a yoga class, something I had always wanted to try, but never made the time for. I started cooking meals for myself, experimenting with new recipes, and finding joy in creating something nourishing. It wasn't much, but it was something. Each small step felt like a victory. Each day that passed without thinking about them, without feeling the sting of their betrayal, was a day closer to reclaiming my peace. But even as I moved forward, I couldn't deny the nagging pain that lingered. There were moments when it hit me out of nowhere, when I was walking down the street or sitting in the quiet of my apartment, and the memories would come flooding back. The times I had spent with him, the laughter I had shared with Olivia, the secrets we had told each other, the promises we had made. It felt impossible to reconcile the past with the present, to accept that they had both played a part in shattering everything I had believed in. It was in those moments, when the pain threatened to consume me again, that I reminded myself of something important. I was strong. I had survived before. I had loved before, and even though it felt impossible, I would love again. But this time it wouldn't be the same. This time, I would protect myself. This time, I would make sure that no one could ever take my trust, my heart, and my peace so easily. One evening, as I sat in my favorite spot by the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized something. The journey I was on wasn't just about moving past the betrayal. It was about rediscovering who I was outside of those relationships. It was about embracing the person I had become and accepting that I didn't need anyone else to define me. I was enough. And as I stood up and stretched my arms above my head, I felt the weight of the past slowly lift off my shoulders. I was ready to move on, ready to reclaim my life. And this time, I was going to make sure that no one could ever take that from me. A week had passed since I sent that final message to Olivia, and while the silence was both soothing and deafening, I started to feel something within me stir, something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It wasn't a loud, triumphant moment, but rather a subtle, quiet whisper in my soul that told me things would get better. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. The first few days after the decision felt like wading through thick fog. My mornings were spent in a haze, and my evenings were equally filled with restless thoughts, wondering if I had made the right choice. It was so hard to let go of someone who had once meant so much to me. But as time went on, I found myself gradually adjusting. The silence between us no longer felt like a punishment. It felt like a gift, an opportunity for me to rediscover who I was without the heavy weight of betrayal constantly pulling me down. I woke up one morning, the sun streaming through my curtains, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I could breathe. I was alone, but for the first time it didn't feel lonely. I had spent so many years seeking validation from others, whether it was from my ex, from Olivia, or from anyone else who had come into my life, but I realized now that the validation I needed had to come from within me. I didn't need anyone to tell me I was worthy. I had to know it for myself. I decided that today I would do something for me, something that wasn't about healing from the past, but about building my future. I grabbed my phone, opened the search engine, and typed the words solo travel destinations. It felt like a small step, but I was eager to take it. I had always dreamed of traveling, of seeing the world beyond the confines of the small town I had spent my whole life in. Now, there was nothing holding me back. Within an hour, I had booked a ticket to Paris. It was a place I had always dreamed of visiting, the city of lights and endless possibilities. The thought of exploring new streets, breathing in a new culture, and tasting new foods filled me with excitement. For the first time in a while, I felt like I was in control of my own destiny. The next few days were spent preparing. I bought a new suitcase, bright red, to remind me that I was stepping into a new chapter of my life. I made lists of things to do, places to see, and foods to try. But more than that, I spent the time reflecting on myself, what I had learned from the past, and how I could use it to shape the future I wanted. I wasn't just traveling to escape, I was traveling to grow. I needed to face my fears, not run from them. I reached out to a few people from my past, friends I hadn't seen in a while, acquaintances I had lost touch with. It was a conscious decision to reconnect with the parts of my life that were untouched by the betrayal. It felt like I was building a new network, one that didn't carry the same heavy memories. People who didn't know the story of Olivia and my ex. People who had only known me for who I was, not who I had been through their eyes. One of those people was Kiera, a college friend who had always encouraged me to pursue my passions. She had seen the spark in me long before anyone else did. We met for coffee one afternoon, and as I recounted the whole story, I could see the concern in her eyes, but also the warmth. She listened patiently, not offering any judgment, just the comfort of understanding. "You're going to be okay, you know?" she said, her words soft but filled with conviction. "You're stronger than you realize." I nodded, grateful for her support. It was the kind of reassurance I needed. I hadn't realized just how much I had isolated myself from the people who truly cared about me. I hadn't given them a chance to help me through the roughest parts. But now, with each conversation, I could feel the cracks in my heart begin to heal, piece by piece. Days turned into weeks, and my trip to Paris loomed closer. As the date approached, I couldn't deny the excitement bubbling inside me. I was nervous, of course. I had never traveled alone before. I wasn't even sure if I could navigate an international airport by myself. But I also knew this was the right decision. This was my moment to stand on my own, to prove to myself that I could do it. And so, the day finally arrived. I packed my suitcase with only the essentials, determined not to overthink anything. I wanted to travel light, both physically and emotionally. As I boarded the plane and took my seat by the window, I glanced out at the airport below. I could see the planes taxiing down the runway, taking off into the sky. It felt like a metaphor for my life. I had been grounded for so long, trapped in a cycle of hurt and self-doubt, but now I was finally taking off. The flight was long, but I didn't mind. I had a book in my hand, and I spent hours reading, but my mind kept wandering. I thought about what I was leaving behind, Olivia, my ex, the life I had known, and about what I was walking toward. The unknown, the future. But as the plane began its descent into Paris, I realized something important. I wasn't afraid of the future anymore. I wasn't afraid of being alone, of being vulnerable. I was ready for whatever came next. Paris welcomed me with its cool breeze and the faint scent of croissants wafting through the air. I stepped off the plane, my heart racing in my chest. The city was as beautiful as I had always imagined. It felt like a dream, like I had stepped into a world where anything was possible. I stood in the middle of the bustling airport, taking in the energy of the place, the people rushing around me with purpose, and for the first time in so long, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Over the next few days, I wandered the streets of Paris, getting lost in the maze of charming cafes, quaint bookstores, and grand boulevards. I visited the Eiffel Tower, marveled at the art in the Louvre, and ate crepes in the park while watching the sun set behind the Seine. I even took a cooking class, learning to make traditional French dishes, something I had always dreamed of doing. And through it all, I realized something else. I was finally living for myself. I wasn't living for anyone else's approval or validation. I wasn't chasing after anyone's love. I was building my life from the ground up, and it felt incredible. I still had a long way to go, but for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. I wasn't running from the past. I was learning from it, using it as fuel to push me forward. And with each new experience, each new connection, I knew that I was healing. I was learning to trust again, not just others but myself. And that, I realized, was the most important thing of all. It had been a month since I first stepped onto the streets of Paris, and every day had been a journey, an unfolding of new experiences and discoveries about myself. Each new city I wandered through felt like a new chapter, a continuation of the story I was writing for myself. And somewhere along the way, I realized that I had stopped thinking about the people who had betrayed me. I wasn't running from the past anymore. I was living my life for the first time in years. And it felt nothing short of incredible. Paris had given me something that I hadn't even realized I was missing. Clarity. I had come here expecting to heal, but what I didn't expect was that in doing so, I would rediscover my strength. I wasn't the same person who had left her apartment a few weeks ago, torn apart by the betrayal of those closest to me. I was no longer consumed by the weight of their actions. Instead, I was forging my own path, one that didn't rely on anyone else for my happiness. And I was learning to trust the universe, knowing that everything was unfolding exactly as it was meant to. I had made peace with the decision to leave Olivia and my ex behind, but that didn't mean the pain had completely disappeared. The memories still surfaced sometimes, usually when I was alone, or when I thought I saw something that reminded me of them. But each time, I managed to breathe through it, to acknowledge the pain, and then let it go. I had learned that grief wasn't a straight line. It ebbed and flowed, like the tides of the ocean, and each time I let it pass, I felt a little lighter, a little freer. One morning, after a few weeks in Paris, I woke up with a sense of anticipation. Today, I was going to visit Montmartre, one of the most iconic neighborhoods in the city, known for its artists, history, and breathtaking views of the Eiffel Tower. I had been saving this trip for a moment when I felt ready, when I knew I could truly enjoy it without looking over my shoulder at my past. Today felt like that day. I dressed in my favorite dress, floral, light, and carefree, and grabbed my camera. I wanted to capture everything, not just for the memories, but because I wanted to remember this feeling. The feeling of being present, of being alive. I had always been someone who tried to plan everything, to anticipate what would happen next, but in Paris, I learned to let go of the need for control. I embraced the spontaneity of the day, the joy of simply being. As I made my way through the winding streets of Montmartre, I felt like I was walking through a painting. The cobblestone paths, the quirky cafes with their outdoor seating, the artists sketching portraits of tourists, it all felt magical. I spent hours exploring, lost in the charm of the place, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. I reached the top of a hill where the view of Paris stretched out before me, like a sea of rooftops. The Eiffel Tower stood tall in the distance, but it wasn't just the landmark that took my breath away. It was the realization that I had arrived at this moment, this beautiful, surreal moment, on my own terms. I had done it. I had healed, and I had moved forward. I had turned the page. As I sat there taking in the view, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had brought me here. The pain, the heartbreak, the betrayals, they had all played a part in shaping who I was now. And while they had hurt, they had also made me stronger. I wasn't the same person I had been when I left. I wasn't the same person I had been before all of this had happened. I was becoming someone better, someone who knew their worth, who no longer needed anyone else's validation to feel whole. But there was still one piece of the puzzle I hadn't yet fully explored. Love. The idea of trusting someone again, of opening my heart to someone new, seemed so distant, almost impossible. I had convinced myself that I didn't need anyone else, that I was enough on my own. And I was. But deep down, I knew there was a part of me that still longed for connection, for someone who could see me for who I truly was, without the baggage of my past. I had learned to love myself, and that was the first step. But I knew that love, in its truest form, was about sharing yourself with someone else, trusting them to see you, to accept you, and to be there for you when the world felt too heavy. The idea of that kind of love seemed both thrilling and terrifying. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. As I sat on that hill, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized that I wasn't alone anymore, not in the way I used to think. I had myself, and that was enough. But if love came into my life again, I would welcome it with open arms. I had learned that it was okay to let people in, that it was okay to trust, that it was okay to be vulnerable, and maybe, just maybe, I would find someone who could add to my happiness instead of taking it away. When the evening began to settle into night, I made my way back to my little apartment, the warmth of the city still glowing in my chest. The streets were alive with lights, and the cafes were full of people enjoying their night out. The city felt like it was alive with possibilities, and for the first time in ages, I felt like I was part of something bigger than myself. I stepped into my apartment, my heart light, my mind at peace. I knew there would still be challenges ahead. Life wasn't always going to be easy, and there would always be moments where the past would try to pull me back in. But now, I had the strength to face those moments. I had the courage to let go of what wasn't serving me, and to step forward into the life I was creating for myself. I looked out the window at the glittering city below, and I smiled. I was finally living the life I had always wanted, the life I deserved. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. And with that thought, I knew that no matter what came next, I would face it with my head held high, my heart open, and my spirit free.